Firstly, we're going to have a look at a brief history of gaming and see how the industry has developed. Then we will look at some recent trends and innovations in gaming. Gaming goes back to prehistory, with card, dice and board games being popular pastimes. One of the oldest known board games is the Royal Game of dating back to 2600 BC. The ancient game of Go, still played today, originated in China more than 2,500 years ago. Even chess goes back to the Middle Ages, where it was known as the King's Game and was used to teach battlefield strategy. Electronic games originated in the late 1940s and 1950s with the development of games to run on mainframe computers. Because these required large and expensive computers, these early games were limited to universities and large companies. However, electronic gaming became widely popular in the early 1970s with the rise of coin-operated arcade machines. One of the first commercially successful arcade games was Atari's Pong, but arcade games evolved quickly to include racing games, top-down shooters, sports games and flight simulators. The early 70s also saw the birth of the home video console market, with the release of the Magnavox Odyssey game console, shortly followed by a home version of Pong from Atari. The popularity of these consoles triggered a boom of home consoles from many different manufacturers. However, despite its initial success, the home console market quickly became saturated, and North America suffered a video game crash in 1977, which saw only Magnavox and Atari survive. Many of the first-generation consoles had the game hard-coded into the system, which meant people could quickly become bored with the games. In contrast, 1978 to 1986 is considered the golden age of arcade games, which continued to be popular. This golden age was sparked with the release of the blockbuster hit Space Invaders. Upright arcade cabinets were joined by innovations like the two-player tabletop cabinets and immersive enclosures, while controls went from simple buttons to joysticks to driving wheels, throttles, light guns and more. This period also saw the rise of the earliest home computers, starting with the Apple II in 1977 and reaching widespread popularity with the ZX Spectrum and the Commodore 64 in 1982. Atari revived the home console market with the introduction of their video computer system, later renamed the Atari 2600. The first popular game for this system was a port of the arcade hit Space Invaders. The main innovation in these second-generation consoles was removable game cartridges, which meant the same hardware could run many different games. By 1982, 8 million American homes had home video consoles, and the home market had an annual revenue of nearly $4 billion. Unfortunately, the home console industry was to crash again in 1983, following a string of poorly designed games like E.T. the Extraterrestrial and Atari's port of the arcade hit Pac-Man. It was Nintendo who led the next revival of the home console in 1985, releasing the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. This marked a dominance shift in the console market from America to Japan that would continue for more than a decade. This period saw the birth of a number of legendary franchises like the Legend of Zelda series, Final Fantasy and Super Mario. Few manufacturers could match Nintendo's success until the 1991 release of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Mega Drive. The early 1980s also saw the introduction of handheld games. Initially simple hard-coded novelty devices, in 1989 the release of the Nintendo Game Boy saw this become a lucrative market. The growth and eventual dominance of home consoles in the 1990s led to the steady decline of arcade games. It was during this time that the video game industry matured into a mainstream entertainment form. Not everyone was pleased by the growth of the industry, with some claims that video games influenced behaviour, with links claimed to addiction and aggression. PC gaming also grew in popularity as hardware became more capable. Initially, IBM-compatible PCs could not compete with specialist game computers like the Commodore Amiga. However, as their graphics and sound capabilities improved, they eventually became the dominant PC platform, edging manufacturers like Commodore and Spectrum out of business. The 1990s were a decade of marked innovation in video gaming and gave rise to several new genres of video games, including first-person shooters and real-time strategy. The end of the decade saw Sega exit the hardware market and Nintendo lose its dominance. Sony achieved success with its PlayStation console, PC software giant Microsoft entered the home console market in 2001 with the Xbox. Sales of the Xbox rocketed with the success of its first-person shooter release title, Halo Combat Evolved. The 2000s saw a struggle for dominance between PC gaming and consoles, with PCs having the edge in technological advances in processing power and graphics, but lower-cost consoles becoming ubiquitous household items. Developers now regularly release titles for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. Gaming in the 21st century has also moved from single-player to an increasing emphasis on multiplayer. The single-player of AAA first-person shooter titles like Call of Duty have dropped to just a couple of hours of gameplay, with the game's long-term survival based on online multiplayer. Gamepads for consoles have been relatively unchanged until the introduction of the Nintendo Wii with motion control. Players use the physical motion of the Wii controllers to play games. Both Sony and Microsoft have released motion controllers for their current generation consoles, but few games have been developed which really use this new type of control effectively. A growing trend made possible by the rise of smartphones and tablets like the iPhone and iPad is casual gaming. The focus of the titles in this booming market is easy-to-learn episodic gameplay. They appeal to non-traditional gamers and can be developed by small teams of developers on a limited budget. So we have followed the growth of gaming into a mature AAA entertainment industry which rivals film, music and television. But emerging trends like casual gaming show there is still plenty of potential for innovation into the future.